So today we're going to be doing door training. So this is the technique and the tools you'll need for 80 to 90% of the doors that you'll be painting. So first I'm going to introduce you to all the tools you need to paint a door that you should have present with you, and then show you the technique that you would use for a majority of doors. This is one of the more complicated doors you'll see, and it's usually budgeted for about an hour and 15 minutes to paint a door like this for the first coat. Second coat on anything is usually about 70% of the door first coat. So the second coat will probably take about 50 minutes or so. So tools we need, obviously we got our paint. And this paint is called Grand Master, or Grand Entrance, sorry. We got our multi-tool for opening our paint can. First thing we'll do is sanding the door to get it scuffed up, so it's not a crazy smooth thing, but it's really to get it scuffed up so that there's a lot of friction so that paint can adhere really well. We got a brush so we can wipe up all the dust so that it's nice and clean before we do the actual paint application. In this case, we're not going to be taking off the door handles, but sometimes when you have weird cut angles for the doors, you'll remove the actual door knob, put it to the side so that you know which door handle goes onto what door, and then you put it back at the end of all of your coats. Drop cloth always just available, or not drop cloth, but just a little rag. I have a putty knife, so in case I get it on the glass, I can always kind of edge it and just get it off quickly before it dries, or even wrap. You'll see me doing it. If I hit the glass, I'll wrap my rag around it and I'll just get the paint off of it. Of course, I have a brush. I have a foam whiz roller. This is just to give it once you've brushed on the paint and before it dries, you smooth it out and it gives a really smooth surface for the paint to dry. And doors, especially with semi-glosses, the more glossy the paint that you're using, the more likely it is to show the imperfections if you have brush strokes or you've brushed in different angles, any of those kinds of things. So you're going to notice that I'm going to be doing everything very uniform as I move through. Probably I'll do everything in a downwards direction. This particular paint has a little bit of a gloss. The glossier it gets, the more delicate you have to be with the actual direction of everything. It shows the most blemishes, put it that way. Then I've got my tray. And I don't know if you can see it here, but on the ground I've put out a drop sheet all the way across. And so that my door doesn't move too much, I'll usually put something behind the door so that it's not moving, or I'll have to hold the door as I paint it. I found some newspaper, I'm just gonna jot it in so that the door doesn't move too much. So first things, in this case, I'm going to do some taping. If you're really good at cutting, you can probably skip the taping, but in this case, most of the time you'll do some taping. I'm going to tape the weather strip at the bottom, which is a rubber, which we won't be painting. And there's kind of a vinyl-ish piece here that's black, which will actually look pretty sharp because we're applying a red paint. So the red paint will have this black contrast, and I'm just going to tape that as well. Once again, you could just cut it if you're really good at it, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to tape it. So when I'm taping, I'm really just focusing on the one edge first, and then I'll just roll my tape over. And I like to do it in sections, so there's just not too much tape to manage. So that looks good. And then I'll just do another section. So maybe do the 2 or 3 sections of tape. And once again, as you get better, maybe you can do the whole thing in one piece of tape. Get the edge, and then I'll roll the tape over. go. So as we move on, and obviously inspect it before you move to the next stage, which will be sanding in a minute. So I'll get the weather strip now. Weather strips are a little easier to cut because it's a big pronounced edge, but we'll do it. Okay, so next step, sandpaper, rag, brush, and we'll give it a scuff sand to clear any dirt, mildew, dust, peeling paint. So you can see it's creating like a roughness, and that'll have a good adherence to the paint. Doesn't have to be like take a long time or anything. Like honestly, just doing that is a lot for paint to adhere to. Kind of use the edge here of the paper and get into these grooves where the paint tends to start peeling most of the time, like 10 years later. Yeah, that's it. Shouldn't take more than a couple minutes to, couple minutes to do your sanding. Then we'll give it a quick brush. So with everything I'm doing, I'm pretty much always moving top to bottom. That goes for everything on any house, but same with doors. Just start in your top section and move your way down, clearing dust, painting, whatever it is. That's it. Okay, so that's all done. So with the 5-in-1, I can open my paint can, just go circular around. Actually,
is it sad over the weekend?
I don't know. Good practice to just give everything a shake. So, thing, clear any dust out of here.
Don't paint the dog.
Don't paint the dog.
Blue. Yes, you already had a blue tail.
So I'll clear my lid to get any excess paint here. Okay, so the first order that I'm gonna do on this door is I start with the interior stuff here. So I'm gonna get all this interior work, brush work done first.
I'm not going to do
and
that.
then I'll work my way up to the edges, and then I'll want to apply a lot of this stuff fairly quickly, especially if it's really hot. I'm gonna want to move fairly quickly with rolling it out so that the paint doesn't dry and be ununiform. So the word is uniformity. The hotter it is, the quicker you, or the better you have to plan out the movement of the door. This stuff you're not going to be able to notice if I painted this at a different time than that nearly as much as if that square was painted 25 minutes different than this one and I forgot to roll it. So the terms are called feathering. As I move through, I'm going to be feathering the door to make sure it kind of like goes from harsh to and kind of fades out so that I fade the next section in to the door. So let's get her started here, and really it's just becoming good at cutting these lines. I cut all my edges of the glass first. and then I roll the face, because the face is what's going to actually show, to make sure it's got that uniform finish. So you can see as I cut that edge, then I cut the other edge, and then the main piece is the front here. I just want to get a nice roll. That's it. So that section is going to have a nice finish at the end. So now I just kind of feather this parts out, and then I'll lead into the next section, and I'll feather in to the next one. So I can drop down here, and I'll do the next one here. So. So I really go on a big angle. It makes it a lot easier to not hit the glass. So you can see I kind of hit the glass right there. So I'll do a quick show of how I would deal with that. That's it. Looks good. Some people even just hit the glass and they just, afterwards it hardens and scrapes it. I don't think that's a good practice. Become good at cutting is the best practice. So that's done now. I'm just gonna apply a tiny bit of paint on the front. And then I'll just feather it into the top section. So. There we go. So now I'll move to the next ones. So that's done. Okay. All right, so now that we are done, so I've done all the interiors. I did them in sections. I cut the edge, and then I whiz roll the front edge to give a nice uniform look, and I just kind of slowly feather in the sections, making sure they don't, I'm not doing too much brushwork before I do the rolling. Otherwise it could dry and then it's hard to fix. Or if it dries too much, you'll have to sand it and fix it all. And that has happened, and it does happen, and it sucks when it happens. So, yeah, base a lot of your behavior switching back from brush to roller on what's going on with the weather and how hot it actually is. So you can see today we're in the shade, and luckily we have a shade cover. If this door was not in the shade, I would have to base the whole thing on when, basically where the sun is at any given moment. So I want to go onto the shade because the doors just I need time. That's my biggest concern, is that sections dry at different rates. So now that this is done, you'll notice I did not cut this edge yet. I left it open because you're going to see how I feather that all in. So next section here, I'm going to fill that in right now. So this gets right into this little edge. Nice and thick. And I'm going to do the whole door really quickly. And then right away, I'm going to get this feathered so that I can do the rest of the door. So basically there's a lot of paint here. I want to just smooth it all in. And you call that feathering. So I'm going to go right into this edge. I'm going to re-roll the front edge right here. Re-roll that part. So see how I do this? This is feathering. And you notice that I'm keeping the whole thing in one direction. So I'm not switch. I can switch this way, but then I have to come back going the same direction as well. So. Okay, so now I can get all of this. A little bit of an exception on this one little section here. So when I'm seeing paint starting to dry, it gives these little defined things. I'm gonna kind of like just push on it to disrupt it and break it up. That's about right. So that's kind of me making the entry into the face of the door. And now I can just do the same thing. I'm gonna break off into sections. So I'm gonna do, next section I think I'll do is from here to there. So that top third of the door. So with my brush, I'm gonna apply paint and cut these side edges. The brush is just a faster way to get the paint onto the door. And I want to get quite a lot of paint onto the door, especially because the thinner the layer of paint that I put on, the quicker it dries as well. I changed my mind. I'm just going to go till there because I can see it's drying already. So now this is really just about giving the uniform look and making sure I don't just end with like a really harsh end like that. You want to get it feathered out, which means that the paint just thins out into a nice fade so that when I want to resume, I can fade into it again. And it's good. So now roll it out. Sometimes a little bit of the cloth or any debris might get stuck in a door. If you do see it, just pick it out with your finger or with a rag. If it dries into the door, once again, we'll have to come back, sand it, and especially with a red glossy paint, very hard to fix the uniformity. So it's all about catching everything while it's nice and wet, which does not last long because it dries very fast, especially in the summer months, which is when we do all the painting. And then at this base part here, I'm gonna feather it out for the next section's ease of merging. And before things dry too much as well, I noticed I did hit on my little hand, on my little silver part here a little bit, so I'll get it while it's wet. Or I could have taken the plate off, but I think that would have taken me, to take off a doorknob and put it back on is probably like 15 minutes at least, and most people forget how to put it back on. But if you get good at it, it becomes easy as well. So whichever method you pick to use more often, it's okay. Cool. hard part is done. I'm gonna do a quick inspection. So you do want to be, like I said, kind of quick. So if it's kind of half dried and then I try and fix something, the risk is that I could just end up peeling a section off because it's half dried to the door already. So time is of the essence with how you move through the door and sectioning and feathering, right? So this is all good. You can see I've feathered this stuff for the most part. And it's not very hot right now and we're in the shade, so I can pretty much finish this whole bottom section in one more section, right? It's this balance of I don't want to be switching back and forth between tools all the time because it's a waste of time. Whether it's on a door or on a house, you always want to use your biggest tools first and use your smallest tools as little as possible. But then I'm weighing that against sun management and heat management. So we don't have much sun, so I'm going to finish the door right now. So once again, do my cut lines first. Just tons of paint, just get it onto the door and I'll deal with everything else after with the roller. Getting into the cracks, obviously way easier with these brushes. Kind of now get it nice in one direction with the brush. Okay. So feather it into this top section. Sometimes I'll even do these little boxes similar to the method I use up here, just because you have to change the angle a little bit. Okay, step back, have a final inspection. Make sure there's not any blotches or runs or anything like that, or weird. If there's any additional feathering you need to do, just so that looks good to me. Cool. That is how you paint a door. These are the tools you need. Those are the technique that you will most often be using. Most doors don't have all this, so usually you can do a door in like 15-20 minutes. When it's just these squares, and we'll just do it in 4 sections. And then you just let it dry. In this case, we're just gonna move over to this door right here. And by the time we finish that in an hour, or I don't know how long that took us, but probably less than an hour, 40 minutes, this will be dry for another coat. If you have multiple doors, like 4 or 5 doors, you can just move around the house, moving your equipment, and by the time you get to the next door, 2 doors done, then you can come back to the first one. So once you're finished the base door, one thing that people often miss, which you don't always have to do, but you'll be able to tell based on what was going on with the door previously, is this inner edge. And in this case, it's clearly brown, so we want to be changing that color. It's going to look weird when you, and most of the time you won't find out until you're long gone and the job's done, the client's paid, and then they call like a week later, like, hey, you missed the inner part of the door, which is really easy to get. Same idea, we apply with the brush, we open the door fully, open the door, brush, and then just, you can cut the edge with the roller. So I'll do that. And then I'll make sure afterwards that I come and just make sure it didn't overlap onto my front part of the door. So in which case I'd have to use the feathering technique again. So I'll definitely have to use the feathering technique again. So I'm basically gonna get this front edge and then just fix my front part of the door first before I finish the rest of it. Because to get into this groove, I kind of have to hit the front the front part of the door here. Very important, just like when you're painting in general, just whenever you have something you've hit that you're not supposed to, short of like maybe a wall, which you're gonna have to come touch up later anyways, just get it while it's wet. So having your damp rag, because it becomes way harder to deal with later on once it's dry and you've missed it. So I hit a little bit of this white and I'm just gonna wipe it off immediately while it's wet. Cool. So first thing is refix the front part. So you can see it just overlapped a bit. So I'm going to put most of the tension there and just really light on the outer side so it feathers it. And yeah, good luck on your doors.